Welcome to another episode of the Heart to Heart podcast. This week, Marc and Brian are joined by Duncan Stewart, a casting director whose credits include some of Broadway's most iconic productions. From Hadestown to Chicago, Duncan shared his journey from dreaming of the spotlight himself to becoming a leader in the casting world. He also offers candid advice for actors and a glimpse into his side of the industry. Whether you're an inspiring actor, theater fan, or just love great stories, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Before you listen, be sure to support the podcast with a 5-star rating and review.
This new office, that I have, A, we cast The Lion King. B, we have, the Denzel Washington, Jake Gyllenhaal Othello that's coming out. We have The Great Gatsby with Florence Welch that we have coming out. Romeo and Juliet, Life of
Before we get into more of you, Duncan, do you think there's a coincidence into, when you're a kid and you're thinking of the quintessential Broadway producer? Do you know what I mean? Like the guy smoking the cigar and the woman with the raspy voice, or, kind of like in charge of the, like being the one in so Fran Drescher, Fran Drescher, right? Like
the
nanny. No, not Fran Drescher. Sorry. The producer.
Weisler.
You wrote Weisler. Okay.
96.
Harry and Fran. So would you call them the quintessential Broadway producers and what you envisioned when you were a kid?
I don't think I even knew what producers were, but I knew that people in New York City, if you had to make it on Broadway, you had to be bright, smart, witty, fast, congenial, and they're all of that. They are. I mean, I have learned everything.
Like in Mel Brooks, the producers, wouldn't you say that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Completely like that. 100%. Yeah.
So why do you think that is? That it's not just them. It's like a lot of, there's no accident why Mel Brooks created that character. So what do you think? Is it a certain individual that becomes the Broadway producer?
Yes. I think it's a showman or a show human.
Like Ringling Brothers.
100%. I've often said that Barry Weisler, not to say that he's circusy, because he's not, but he has that old school chutzpah to him. He can literally, I've always said this, what I learned from Barry Weisler is how to make a fire out of one piece of kindling. You don't need two like most people to make fire. Barry knows how to take one piece of kindling and light a fire with it. And that's smarts, that's chutzpah.
Interesting, yeah. And he was a team with his wife.
Yes, he was. He was 96, it's crazy.
That's incredible.
Looks fantastic.
All right, Duncan. So we want to get to that. So you had this dream of, or this vision, of maybe you weren't even aware of, but it was working for yourself, being the one in charge, and you always worked with other people.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you one thing, because I talked about this the other day, funnily enough, and it's topical for today. Where is it? Yes, this is it here. Now, the only reason that I am in New York City is this tattered book.
Wow.
That I have underlined every page. This was a book that I found in college. You can see how it's all falling apart. It's about the power of, the power of believing, positive thinking, but written by Claude M. Bristol. And I vision boarded this. I did. I got out of Vancouver Island, where Victoria is. I got to Toronto. I got to New York City. I'm not gloating in this because it was hard work, but I did envision it to happen. I wished it to happen. I wrote 21 manifestations 2 times a year, where I just would map out what 21 things I wanted to have manifested. I kept one in my, actually 3. I kept one in my wallet, one in my bag, and one by my bedside table.
Okay, elaborate for audience a little more specific about what that book is.
It's very early school self-help. Uh-huh. So, and when you read it now, there's parts of it that are old-fashioned. They talk about one day we'll get to the moon, but we have been on the moon. And it's a book about believing that you can transform yourself, looking at the world in a magical kind of way, and not getting bogged down by the science of it, which is important. But yeah, looking at the world through a magical lens, believing in abundance versus scarcity, believing that if you actually will something to happen, it can happen. And if that specific thing doesn't happen, other things will come along. It's like going fishing, I always say. You may want to get salmon, but if you go out there and you get trout, you get trout. If you get no fish, you had a good day fishing with your buddies.
Maybe there's too much pressure, Duncan, but I forgot the book I'm reading. It's about the founder of Virgin. What's his name?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Branson.
Yeah, I have so funny. I have his book over there too.
So the very first paragraph of the book, he says, not in the exact words, but unless you really love what you're doing, don't waste your time. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, if you love what you're doing, that's everything, and everything will come from your love of what you're doing.
I love what I'm doing now. I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. I'm able to take a little bit of a step away from the trenches of casting, which I'm still in it, obviously. But in this new role, I've had to, I have a corporation behind me. So I've had to learn corporate speak, and I've hired a business coach to learn corporate speak.
Can you give one example of corporate speak that you had to learn?
Return on investment.
Okay, ROI. Okay.
Yeah, ROI, or even things like, with the, there's an accounting department now. And what he said to me is, listen, with the accounting department, timeliness is the most important thing with them. It's not about the facts and the figures on all of that. And actually bringing that up, I'm fine at facts and figures, but it's not something I love. And I was worried when I first started that, oh my God, I'm not going to, I'm not doing the spreadsheets or the budgets for the 2024. And my business coach said, that is all very important, and you will learn that. But do you think, Duncan Stewart, you are hired for this position to be the budget guy? No, you were hired because of you're conjuring up stuff,
Hey, it's Brian. I'm dropping in on an important announcement. What you need to know is you have more control over your career than you think. The thing standing between you and the career you want is your connections, and that's where One-on-One Next Level comes in. If you are not a member yet, you can apply to join at oneononenextlevel.com. Press pause and do that now. If you are already a member and you are ready to get back on track, we want to invite you to book a strategy session with us led by myself personally. We will help you prioritize which classes make the most sense given your career goals. You can find these under the Resource Hub in your account portal. We can't wait to hear your success story.
So Duncan, hold on now. What about you actors who are in a rut, who are feeling like they're not getting anywhere, and we just talked about you need to do something you love. What would you say to find that thing? And then I want to give Brian his chance. I just didn't want to forget my thought. What would you say to the audience who feels like they're not getting anywhere and they don't even know if they love it or not anymore?
I think you have to make conscious efforts to connect with your own creativity, whatever that may be. I mean, I have a balcony in my place. I didn't use it all last summer. I sort of forgot about it. Mo's get his visa, which is one of the reasons why he's going to Paris, get his visa renewed, which means he hasn't been able to travel. So I haven't traveled as much, and the new job hasn't afforded it. I'm like Duncan, instead of feeling like I got to get out of New York, I don't travel. I used to travel. You have a balcony out here with trees and flowers. Use it more. It's right outside your window. Wake up. I have a rooftop deck. That's so I think it's just like plant a garden, go for a walk, take swimming lessons, write, read a play, don't read a play. I think it's the little things, quite frankly, that I think can sustain us that we forget about.
Brian, sorry to interrupt.
That's great. Actually, I actually changed the direction I wanted to go in. But that's such a good point, because so many people think, I need a trip, or I need a car, or I need this. But it really is the little things. It's kind of like, and this is going a little off topic, but it's kind of like skincare. This great facialist I know, she says, you can do all the $300, $500 facials, but it really is about like what you do every single day, the moisturizer, the olive oil, the whatever.
Maintenance.
That's right. So it sounds like you're talking like actors need creative maintenance kind of for their soul.
But you know what he's saying is it's not just actors. Like I was asking you, and I didn't want to get off the train of thought, because you obviously chose to get into casting from way back with Elaine Alda for giving you that first opportunity, right? Then you went down this road, and you admitted it. You said there was something got in the way where you were just cast. You needed something else. Now you're at your job. You love it. right?
Yeah.
But what was the through line is you still made a choice a long time ago to get into casting. You didn't quit, but when the moments got a little blurry, you found these other things to keep it going.
Well, the funny thing is, casting fell into my lap. What I knew is I always wanted to move down to the States. That's the thing. I saw those old movies. I saw musical theater stuff, plays, That's Entertainment, all those old movie musicals. That's what I wanted. I didn't know that I wanted to. I always thought I was going to be a performer. Of course, that's not what I am. Casting, well, what I said about the fish, I went fishing to find salmon, i.e., maybe being an actor, and instead I pulled up a career in casting and never even thought it was possible until I got here. So, but I knew New York was where I was going to make my mark. I used to write on those 21 manifestations. I will live, breathe, eat in New York City. I will make my living in New York. I wrote all that stuff out.
Was there a point where you perhaps wanted to consider quitting casting? Because I know a lot of our listeners, actors, they probably every day or every month have a thought: should I go to medical school? Should I become a lawyer? I'm curious to see if you ever had that. When it sounds like the going kind of got tough at a certain point.
I think, yeah. Well, what's funny is that when I was still at NAMCO, trying to figure out what my next step was going to be, and that's one thing I also have to say too. I'm a kind of guy that gets restless, right? Like 5 to 7 years, I do something. We did so really close to 14. When I was at NAMCO, and I was like, what am I going to do? And this is before I met Benton. I'm like, I'm going to switch over to being an agent. And I met with Harry Abrams of Abrams, and I did 2 interviews with him being the third, thinking that I was going to become an agent. So I was already thinking about getting out of casting very early days. But you know what it is like when I wasn't tired of casting when I was at NAMCO. I wanted my own shingle. That's what I now know. The impetus to leave was to build something of my own.
And you felt you needed somebody else to hold your hand?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Not to hold my hand, but to hold each other's hands. The pandemic coming back as a casting director. To both, actually. When the pandemic hit, it was like, oh God, I've spent all this money and all this stuff to have a career that now could, who knows, right? We all knew nothing was going to be taken for granted. So that was a tough one. And then coming back, oh my God, trying to get Broadway, which had been shut down for almost 2 years, up on its feet.
When you got into the part of casting for Chicago, where you had to actually, the pressure was on to bring on stars who maybe not necessarily so talented, but their name was big. How did you creatively think of who should be, whether it's Roxy or somebody, how did you do that?
Old school. I bought $300 worth of magazines, everything from Ebony to Variety to Billboard to Teen Beat to People. Came back to the Weiss's office, circled all these shit tabloid magazines, just circled it, and then said to an intern, take all those names and put them into a spreadsheet. And then I took out the ridiculous ones. Angelina Jolie's never going to do Roxy. And then I took those to Mark. It was old school, literally, through, newspapers. Crazy. That's how I found Ashley Simpson, because I heard her tour was canceled because of the whole lip sync thing that she did on Saturday Night Live.
That was years ago.
Yeah. And I'm always a little bit like with Chicago. Ask not what you star can do for Chicago, but we can do for you. Sofia Vergara, she wasn't known here at all. Broadway did something for her. Jinx Monsoon, who sold so many tickets, was known, but it was niche. Coming to Broadway, it did something for Jinx. It did something for Ashley Simpson, gave it legitimacy.
And Duncan, you had mentioned, we're talking a little bit about how your current role, as vice president is a little bit different than when you were a partner and co-owner at Stewart Whitley. You had said you're kind of a little bit more distant from the trenches of day-to-day casting.
A little bit,
Can you kind of elaborate on that and kind of, because, I know some of our actors sometimes will see like, oh, this person's a VP of casting. But like, what exactly do they do?
It's interesting because I have a team in place right now. So casting directors in our office: Jared Ritchie, Patrick Miravia, Mark Brandon, Kyle Coker, myself, and Kendra. So that's a lot of casting directors. So I can put Patrick onto Life of Pi, and he can be in the room solo. I can put him on Chicago. Barry Weiser loves Patrick, so I don't have to be there as much in the trenches. And I also trust this team, and it's a bigger team. With this, there are people that I have to report to, right? I report to a senior vice president of operations. There is a CFO that I've got to talk to about the budget with and goals that the office have to make. It's a corporate structure. So it's not just me anymore, and I want to know how to properly use Reich, Concur, Teams. I want to be able to be the blend of corporate and artistic, I think actually, quite frankly, I've got lots to learn, but I'm liking it. So what does the senior vice president do? I now have time specifically because I have to report to people that are above me behind the company. What are your goals for ARC? What are your financial goals? What is your vision? How do you want to handle this to team? Who do you want to hire?
I'm almost thinking it's almost like you went from being the head cook at a diner, right? Where you're like, you got all these meals to make and you're like behind there working. And then all of a sudden you are the chef of you're the signature chef of like Wolfgang Puck or whatever, where you're like just overseeing the other chefs at all your different restaurants.
Yeah,
it sounds like that.
Hey folks, Brian here. Mark and I often cringe when people call One-on-One Next Level a workshop studio because we are so much more than that. You and I both know that not all workshop studios are the same, and I can tell you with complete confidence that no other studio offers the same level of care or programming that we do, and we do so with pride. Here's just a few examples.
I'm Emily, and before One-on-One Next Level, I was in a super dark place in my career. I tried a lot of things to find representation, but nothing seemed to work, and I felt invisible. Then, almost as a Hail Mary, I signed up for a manager session. It was incredible, but it was also the thing to land me a manager. Since then, I booked a national commercial, I've gone on to create a thriving voiceover career, and signed with an agent, all through these classes and programs. One-on-One Next Level has been the single most important thing that's influenced my acting career and life in so many ways.
I'm Neil. In the last year, I booked 2 co-stars and 1 top-of-show guest star on major TV series. I also shot my first lead in a feature film. In fact, I've hit 20 big milestones thanks to the connections that I've made in classes at One-on-One Next Level. The key has been getting in front of casting directors. And that's why I love One-on-One Next Level. If you're not a member yet, what are you waiting for? Every actor deserves face time with the people in the business who can move your career forward. And One-on-One Next Level can help you do that.
Did you know One-on-One Next Level produces over 335 events and classes each month? Whether you join us in person or attend on Zoom, you can meet with A-list casting directors, filmmakers, TV showrunners, and executive producers, as well as agents and managers when you become a member. These days, it's harder and harder to get real face time with industry pros, but One-on-One Next Level makes it possible. To become a member, visit www.oneononenextlevel.com and click join. We can't wait to hear your success story.
So that book, is that book that you crinkled up, is that called Believe?
The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. And I found this because of Liberace.
Right. So you said to him, I'm going to get you, so in other words, this guy wanted it. He told you he wanted to get into casting.
Yep.
Now,
that's
would
the
you
thing. His world imploded. And when I sat with him, I said, don't be scared by implosion. Something comes off the shelf. Oof, more shelf, just put something else onto that shelf.
Well, the unofficial slogan of our podcast is where there's a will, there's a way, because that's how One-on-One has,
But this is you. You determined, you came to New York to be I think originally to try to be an actor, but then you met Elaine and you had a casting opportunity. Is that right?
That is right. I mean, listen, I came down here. My wording was, which is hilarious. I wrote my agent and a few artistic directors that I worked with up in Canada at the time. I'm going down to New York for 3 months to muck about and get roughed up. Because I thought you had to be mean in the city, and you don't. That's another big thing I learned about New York City. It was Michael Kirsten, the agent, who phoned me and said, "You're so nice, you're returning an agent phone call." I'm like, "What?" And when I realized that you could make your mark by returning an agent's phone call, i.e. being nice, and you didn't have to be an asshole, then I'm going to choose nice. And it's served me well. I mean, I don't regret it.
Yeah, I'm
I will
pretty
say,
positive Michael Kirsten happens to be a really good softball player.
really?
Yeah, my friend plays with him in Central Park.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah.
You know, I have a thank you to you guys. It's funny in my 50th year, and Mo has been with me now for 2 years. And, you know, if you're, and again, comes from a humble place, but at 56, which I'm turning this May, you do start to hear and see, you know, like everything is a culmination of your efforts and what the years that you lived and how you've done things. And I couldn't do what I'm doing now if I hadn't done all the stuff that I've done before. The amount of people, actors, who come up on a street or in an email or when I go see them at a comedy club and like, Duncan, you actually taught me at one-on-one. And what I learned was this. I got to tell you, and generally, no, not even generally, when you start to hear all the nice comments, and it's not just bullshit, people just being, I like your class. They remember a phrase or a teaching or a poem that I wrote or a format. But you know what I mean? Like it was through one-on-one. You gave me the platform to do that.
You commanded the platform. So thank you, but you commanded the platform.
Well, we did it together, right? You see, that's the thing, right?
Okay, hey Duncan, because we have such a close connection, and you know, and this is what happens in friendship too. Okay, so I got a little. So I'm going to share this with our audience because this caused a little riff, and once again, I own this. Okay, so I don't know if you remember, but I think you remember that we've had a number of people in your industry. Okay, and once again, in the entertainment industry, whatever you want to call it, who will have these classes with actors and say, you know, you must be on set, like early is on time, and you must, when you commit, you must be at the rehearsals and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, Duncan, on this end of things, okay, which has nothing to do with you yet, okay, on this end of things, we get these calls like an hour before a class. Listen, this is so-and-so teaching the class tonight. I know it's in a half an hour, but something has come up and I cannot make it. Or they'll say, we've had a casting emergency. And meanwhile, it's 6:30 at nighttime. And I've never heard of an actor have to like be in a casting at 7 o'clock at nighttime. Suddenly they're like, we're going to be having more castings tonight, so I will not be showing up in 20 minutes from now. Or there'll be all kinds of, okay. So in other words, there's that thing called commitment. And there's that other thing called like, I'm committed until maybe a friend comes to town and I'll use all kinds of language to say I can't make it. Okay. So because of that, you got the brunt of one time calling in and I believe you must have had, maybe it was COVID. Who knows?
Oh, it was COVID.
Hold on. So you were in the bathtub. I made you and I said, Duncan, put on your panties and get out of that bath, and you are coming to teach this class. And you got so mad, and I understand it because I was coming from a place of like, not you, anybody else, but not you. And you just got the brunt of like what so many people do in this industry to not even thinking that, hey, listen, there are fannies in the seats, and just because I don't feel like coming in, I'll create an excuse. And meanwhile, these are the same people, Duncan, and once again, this is not you, that preach to actors how they need to commit to something.
Oh yeah, listen, the funny thing about that story is I remember very distinctly, we were shutting down Hadestown tour auditions. I was having this horrible headache for 3 days before. I literally couldn't take a subway home because it was going to be too loud. I walked home from Pearl Studios to 49th. I got in, Rod and I weren't together, but Rod came in the next day because I wasn't feeling well, and he stayed for 5 days because I was like, I was out of it. I got COVID really bad. Thank God I didn't go to the hospital. But I was in the bath. You're calling, the office is calling. I've got this headache. The lights are off. And I remember you called me and you're like, Duncan, I know you're not at home. You're in session. I just spoke to your assistant. What the assistant didn't know was I had to let Luke stay in the room because I'm like, I can't even speak right now. I got to go, Luke. You have to finish down the session. And you know, Brian, what I did?
I remember you told me, yeah.
I took a full body shot, but I'm here. But you know what? You can't be friends in this life if you don't have some sort of war wounds. You go ups and downs. I mean, please, you and I are big personalities. So we're gonna have little butts. Like, who cares?
But the point is, do you agree? Like, there's some people who you cannot. In other words, you're the kind of person when you're committed to something, you commit. And I think that's the actors have to understand that it's not just them, but like, you know, the other side, you'd be amazed how many Looney Tunes there are people wise. Do you know what I mean? Who like will not honor a commitment.
Yeah, I think it's about principle, and I do think it's, you know, better to, you know, I like this phrase: don't overpromise and underdeliver. If you cannot commit to a class to teach, then don't offer to teach it,
and don't make excuses.
Or say, hey, listen, you guys build in an extra week when you teach as a fallback. Why? Because you're smart. You know that some things happen, so you build that into the contract, if you will. But for people that just like, oh, I can't, and no, it's a commitment. It's as you say, it's a commitment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I mean, Duncan, when I reach out for my class, you're going to be kind and get back to me, right?
No, listen.
I'm kidding.
No, and Duncan, so listen, while we're on it, you listen, I understand it. 3 weeks doesn't work for you. What would work for you? Because I don't want to do anything that you don't even remotely feel. If you feel like no way, let's not even, but if there's
last year would have been no way, because I was so working so hard, figuring out this new role. I figured it out, still figuring it out. So I have a bit more, not time necessarily, I have a bit more bandwidth, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So
you are born to teach, Duncan, I mean it.
Well, the funny thing is, one of the things I like about this team at ARC, I now have the bandwidth to be a leader of this team. And when you're a leader of a team, you have to be a teacher in some sort of way. You got to be a role model. Role model is a teacher.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And mentoring people, that's teaching, that's leadership. So that's probably also why, too, I feel, you know, fulfilled, is because I'm leading in a way that I haven't led before.
And it sounds like, at least, you know, you had mentioned from your classes here, it's like you really made an impact on these actors that years later bring up to you what they learned in the class.
Years later. And when I always say things like, I remember what you said to me, I'm like, oh God, what did I say? You know, and there's a guy who does a comedy thing. I mean, Mo knew him. Mo loves comedy. We went to see his comedy show. And then afterwards, the guy writes me and says, oh, I'm so Duncan, you came to the comedy night. I still remember taking that class at 1-on-1 years ago with you. And Mo's like, wait, how do you know the comic? I'm like, I don't know. He took a class with me. And he said, I've always kept in mind, like, what you said or whatever. And it was something about timing. It was something about stillness and timing that he carried with him. But It is interesting when you start getting older, how people say these things to you. Yeah, I'm just grateful for it.
So here's how we're going to end this thing, Duncan.
Yeah.
It's 80 years from today.
Yeah.
And someone's coming to your gravesite and they see you get one sentence on your tombstone that sums up your life. What would that one sentence say?
He flew.
I love it. I love it.
He flew.
Okay. I will share with you mine.
What is that?
If the buffet is open, grab a plate.
Oh, yeah. That's good. That's better than mine.
No better. I love He Flew. It's short. It's going to cost a lot less for the engraver. I love it.
But you know, I've always said life is a buffet. Always. I also love this phrase. I stole it. Better ask for, what is that? Better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Mm.
In other words, when you're making snap decisions, I don't know, we should talk. No, you can always ask for you can always say apologies later. This just needs to be done now.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't done it yet, please support Heart to Heart with a 5-star rating and a review.